when they asked me to do this, it didn't have the word keynote attached to it. It had, would you do a little history of our organization? So, and one of the nice things about doing a history is that we're not talking about the Civil War here, right? So a lot of the people in this organization have been around for large parts of this. So, and I'm going to be looking for their help as I get through this. If I miss anything that's of significance as we go on, and as I go through this history of the organization, but again, what we're going to be focusing on, as you'll see, is the early days, and particularly the first 10 or 15 years, because how we came to be, and then what we transitioned into was a very large change in that first 10 or 15 years, and we continue to grow. Happily, the board that's working now, the organization is in a great place, but there were a lot of issues that were there at the beginning that happily, a lot of them are resolved as we went along. So, but another thing I want to do before we is to put it in a context. Because when you're talking about the history of an organization, it's not just what we did, it's not just what Kinship did, but what was going on in the church at the same time, because we're reacting against that. And even and just as important, what was going on in the larger social community. What was LGBT life like back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s? Because we were, the people in this organization were responding to it. So I'm going to go down that road. One caveat I do want to say, obviously I'm a white gay male, so by definition I'm going to try my best to include the different events that involve, that obviously there's a lot of things, but I'm looking to the women in this organization who have been around for a long time. Catherine and Yolanda and Karen, who was our treasurer in the way back, and then went off, and we missed her desperately for a period of time, and then and came back. So I'm looking for you if there's anything that I'm not thinking of. Would you please, let me know about it. But before we start, the important things, I want to show you some of our we were big on T-shirts back in the early days of Kinship. Every camp meeting had its own design. So what I've got here in what looks like the rag trade on this table are a few of the early camp meeting T-shirts. And of course, the first one you're really going to be in awe of because it's a medium. So this is 1981. I need two, right, to cut it down to 5 minutes together nowadays. But this you have to remember, this was the second camp meeting, the first one that this organization, as an organization, put together. Then this is 1984, Colorado, etc.
These are hip again.
Yeah. Look at the color. How exciting is this? And then there is this is 1985. Kind of a sleeveless variety. Let's just say I wouldn't be wearing any of these things now. And then this was Toronto, 1986. This one definitely shrank in the wash. So these are large. Yeah. And then what I particularly like is I like blue. This was what year was it? 1995. So a family reunion, I think, was the topic. So anyway, I want to show you a few of those. And then as we go along, what I'm going to do is I have a few show and tell items that are more related to our history. So I'll show those as we go along. Okay, so Kinship, for those of you who have looked at the bio or the history on our website, we look back to the 70s, really, because the things that were going on in the 70s, it was a time, again, think of the bigger context. That when gay people were still, Stonewall had only happened in 1969, so through the 70s, there was still a lot of reaction to that. A lot of people who were closeted, certainly to their families and so forth. And so the initial things were, any of you that are more my age than some of the people who weren't born yet when we talk about the 70s might remember that the Advocate had a classified section where people would put their name and address, and so if you wanted to be contacted, you put your information in. And so in many ways, that's the very, very beginnings of what was to become Kinship in the 70s, was the activity of a couple of people. In Southern California, we had a number of people. Ben Piquel, who became the leader of that group, put an ad in the Advocate. Jim Stewart and and I already, another caveat, I'm going to miss names as we go along here, so if I'm egregious in any of this, those of you who want to put your hand up. This is no reason why this should be a monologue. But Jim Stewart in San Francisco also put an ad in. Ron Lawson, who became one of our significant thought leaders in the early days in New York. And all of these folk in Southern California, because there was a density, in this whole area, they started to have meetings. So in many ways, the date you often will see is 1976, when one of the first meetings happened in Southern California, and a group of gay people got together and met, and basically were shocked to find others. And so those very early days of am I the only gay person? And a thing that I think was really important then is that in those days there were people that would come to Kampmeeting in the early days that thought they were the only gay person in the world. In other words, for many more years after that, there were people that came to Kampmeeting that thought they were the only gay Adventist or lesbian Adventist in the world. But there were people that when they first contacted what was to become Kinship, they didn't know that there were other gay people. And there was another side to that, because in the church, history in those 70s, my feeling is that there were a lot of while the church had very strong thoughts, as we were saying, which again was another didn't end well kind of a movie. And then movies like Maurice, for any of you who have a movie background, 1987 things were perking up. And again, on the women's side, the Children's Hour with Audrey Hepburn, 1961. Again, Killing of Sister George, 1968. Again, important movies in the lesbian, movie iconography. But again, not the happiest of storylines for any of these things. But they became better. I'm giving you those dates as a person who, did a master's in history. So there's my history part of this trying to do. 1980 was when a big change came, because they'll say, and happily it's a nice round number, right? So 1980 is when you had the group in Southern California that had started to meet, and then you had the mailing list in San Francisco and in New York. And again, one more thing, it's important, where are those places? Cities. And not that, they're fairly liberal cities. So is any of this place in Des Moines? No, et cetera. But what happened in 1980 is Ron Lawson, who I think needs, in my mind, has always had a special place in the organization, because this is a professor of sociology who had a focus on urban studies and movements in his teaching career. And what he did is he organized a meeting in Arizona that became what we call our first Kampmeeting. At that point, I don't know that anybody, it was just a meeting that we're going to have. And what he did, and just also important to understand what the church was, the church said, Neil Wilson, for those of you who are old enough to know who these people are, who is the father of today's Ted Wilson, the okay for a number of seminary professors to come to that first Kampmeeting. Now, I'm going to kind of skip over all the what happened there, because that's the part that I think that gets most notoriety. But those three seminary professors, a New Testament scholar, Jim Cox, an Old Testament scholar, Larry Garrity, who many of you from Southern California area know as the former president of La Sierra. Fritz Guy was there, and then there were Harvey Elder, who was a medical doctor, and then I'm sure I'm missing somebody here, but Colin Cook. Now, many of you may or may not know who Colin is. Colin was someone who established the Quest Learning Center in Pennsylvania. And the Quest Learning Center was connected to Homosexuals Anonymous, and it was basically a conversion therapy. That if that you come for therapy and so on, and that was what the church was, as you would imagine, was leaning towards. So the requirement for the meeting was that he be there also. So, and then a whole slew of people that Rob knew who were LGBT came to this meeting, and it was long sessions with many tiers and so forth, where they told their stories. And let me reiterate again, one of the things that we've always been proud to, and this, as you see, this little discussion will veer in different places, but Stephen and Deneen, their insistence upon telling stories and how the power that had it at that first Kampmeeting. Telling the stories of how these people had been, disfellowshipped from their churches, had been kicked out of their houses and so on, tough stories. had an impact. And anyway, to finish it off, very powerful meeting. They came up with a list of recommendations, that group of 5, which was sent to the General Conference, Neil Wilson in particular, and they left, and there was a certain amount of upbeatness to it because the people at that meeting were receptive. And I will tell you that one of the things I want to do in this little thing is that one of the themes I'm going to be tracing is that during the 80s, which is now what I'm going to focus on, was really significant, is that first part of the 80s, there was a whole openness, there was a hope that this organization would have a conversation and there might be real change in the church. I mean, talking at the highest levels. And I, wanted to give you a little hint of where this is going. It didn't work out that way. So, it had an impact on everything that happened. And then there were changes in the larger society, changes in the church, and then changes in kinship throughout that decade that kind of moved everything away from that. And so, and as you can see, there's a reason why we brought in the quilt, because later in that decade, as I'll get to in a few minutes, the AIDS crisis, came upon us, and suddenly there were, what was seemed a terribly important thing as far as working with the church, other things began to intrude into what's important in everybody's life who was involved with all of this. So, okay. Another thing I just want to point out too is that it was in 1986 of this month, of that decade again. I'm trying to give you some points here to hang on to. 1986 that the Supreme Court ruled in Bowers v. Hardwick in a 5-4 decision that upheld sodomy statutes. So this is the Lewis Powell, the famous story about most people think he was ready to vote the other way, that is to strike it down. And then somewhere along the line, he got convinced to join what became the majority that upheld. And that, of course, was not overturned until 2003 with Lawrence v. Texas. So obviously now you can tell there's a lawyer in there somewhere, right? So the case is the statutes have to come in. All right. So in that beginning, we had an ongoing conversation as the organized church. We left that place. The LGBT members were excited. They agreed to get together again in September of 1980. I was supposed to go to that first camp meeting. My mother went to the hospital, so I had to cancel last minute. But I was at the first board meeting in September of 1980. And of course, everybody's getting together. And you have to remember, this is a movement, right? So in other words, it's that whole thing, and what are all the things you have to do? Well, you want to create a movement. You know what? You want to create an organization. What does that mean? Things like, it should be incorporated, should we have a mission, should we have bylaws, should we have, all those things that really were not the things that people wanted to spend their time on, because, they came out with like, let's get stuff done, let's tell people who we are. So all of that had to go on at the same time. So it was exciting, but it was a lot of energy that was being, going into. So on the one hand, there was that, and I'll come back to that. On the other hand, with the church, Neil Wilson, again, it's really pretty amazing to look back on it, appointed a retired vice president of the General Conference named W. Duncan Eva to be a liaison to kinship. And of course, Ron Lawson, of course, as the person who had organized that, we immediately made him into what we in those days called church liaison, because we still had hope that might work out. And so there was a conversation, and we have, as time goes through this, there was back and forth. Those proposals that the delegates from the GC had come up with, they were going to take them back to the General Conference, and could they be implemented? The questions about that went on for a number of years. It was a highly emotional time. Now you got to remember, these are people, as I mentioned, who felt a lot of pain, and then now we're feeling a lot of energy. And so those early days, what I can tell you for anyone that was around, and let me just, I was going to do this at the beginning, but let me just stop because I think it's useful to know. How many people's first camp meeting, I'm asking you, the decade you came to your first camp meeting, are there people here whose first camp meeting was in the 80s? Floyd and Jeff, anybody else? Okay, and then how about in the 1990s? Okay, so there's still a fair number of people in the 1990s. In the aughts, the 2000s. So, okay, and then the teens. All right, and then how many of this is your first camp meeting? Oh boy. course, for those of you, who it's your first candy, for a lot of you, you weren't born during when any of this happened. So I'm sure it's a little bit like those professors that talk about the Civil War, and then Grant and Lee, or whatever they're in there. This doesn't go on for too long. But in those early days, there was a lot of tears, and a lot of excitement and a lot of pain. So those meetings in that first decade, I can tell you, we'd have board meetings, and there was a lot of, we need to get messages out, and we were, so that was one of the things in that first decade. It was all about getting the word out. Of course, do we have the internet? Do we have anything electronic? No. So what it became is there was the thing of sticking what is kinship messages, and there was a famous one with baloney on the outside, etc., underneath the doors in dorms. So we had a number of colleges where they go and somebody would go in and get 2 or 3 designated people, and one night at 3 a.m., and they're petrified that they'd get caught, they slipped a note under every door saying, someone may be gay, this type of thing, or LGBT. And of course, the next morning, all the gay people, the closeted gay people on campus thought, oh my God, they stuck it under my door. This is what you call you learn by experience. So of course, the next time we did it, this is a note to tell everybody in the dorm. We're putting a note under every door tonight saying that that this is that who we are and so forth. And we sent out letters to pastors. He's remembering what happened to him. So people got these things, and of course, the ones who were gay, we got it, and they may have remembered it, but they were shocked at the beginning and so forth. But it was our way of getting the word out, because we weren't likely going to be getting much coverage as the time. Also, it's important that this is in this world. Another thing on the larger. This is all before Will and Grace and Ellen came out. So in the outer world, in that bigger, larger social world, gay people, unless you knew someone, right? It was all about all the bad stories. And for those of you who are LGBT, I don't need to remind you what those were. But it's all the things about their sex crazed. They're all, it's all banned by God and all the rest of it. Which changed as time went on. Also, many of the people that were coming into kinship had gone ahead, and been married, and so they were dealing with all of the pain that from coming out, or some that were still married, their spouses didn't know. So we had a fair amount of that. Most were closeted, and even the leadership. Any of you, if you get a chance to look at the kinship website in the history, the Us section, there's a lot of the early newsletters. In fact, we had more of the early newsletters. And if you see the pictures of, I don't have any from the really early ones, but in the early days, there were these pictures that we would take, and I think we still do, with paper over our faces. So we'd ask everybody to take a picture where it's everybody, in other words, it would just be to the people who went, and then there would be the ones we put in the connection, and we'd ask you to do one of these things. And in the early days, fully half of the people were doing this. So it was something we were all dealing with, and even the leadership. When we if you look at the newsletter, the names in the leadership were not necessarily their real names. They were often, and even for those of us in leadership positions, remembering which faux name belonged to which of your board members sometimes took a little work. So in other words, so now I'm going to follow try to follow the line of what was going on in the organization. As I said, we need to get out the word, that information on the doors. We started putting together information packets, which went on for decades, to get out a letter. I was at all the board meetings, and literally at every board meeting, we had no idea where we were going to get the money to do any of the things we were talking about. So we would always pass the hat, and literally the board members in those days would just throw in, whatever they could. And I want to give a particular shout out to Jim Stewart, who was, because he was a technology person in the early days. So he was like, and I was a lawyer, working, but in those days I wasn't making much yet either. But I was, trying to do something. He would throw in a $1,000 check, which I can tell you, in 1982 was worth a heck of a lot more than it is today. So that was important. And one of the things, all the things that we learned then is we needed to do all those things I mentioned, bylaws and all that, because we want to incorporate. And the idea of incorporating, what does that lead to? You want to be able to get a 501c3, which for those of you who are involved in not-for-profit work, you have to have a 501c3 from the federal government for people to be able to deduct from their taxes a donation to the organization. So that was going to be, was going to take a little bit of work. And in fact, I brought along here a few of these little tidbits in case you want to, I'll put them on this table in case you want to just see, it's like, it's not exactly Torah from the years of the Romans or something, but it's from our early days. This is an old kinship, an old kinship letterhead, a letter that we would put on our door. This one is, Dear WWC student, this letter is being sent to all students at Walla Walla College. We ask that you read it so you'll be informed. SDA Kinship is an international support group, blah, blah, and et cetera. And, my name on the back. So I suddenly was having my name underneath lots of doors and lots of whatevers. But happily, I was, pretty much out in my entire life, so I could do it. This is a copy of our, which we got to show you how it takes a while. We got we incorporated, let's see, in 1981, and we got our 501c3 notice from the IRS in March of 1983. So, these things were taking time. And then we also, and what I also want to give, is one of the things that is going to come up as we get later in the decade is a lot of our early leadership, became ill at some point. Your tax deduction, you have to kind of follow corporate rules and have controls. And this is where I believe that as an organization, you put your hands in, just as you do in your life, in the hands of God. And it's God's will be done. And what we counseled each other, we had to remind each other periodically, because you can imagine there are things that are happening that some people were not happy about. So they wanted to retaliate or say, do something proactive to be negative to the side. It's just, look, we're here to do what we can for the community. And if we're good at what we do, it will prosper. And if we're not good at what we do, it'll go away. And that's the way it should be, because it's and so what happened over the years, if I can bring this story to an end, is that ultimately about 4 or 5 years later, Vern came back to Kinship, and we folded the two organizations back together. And in fact, he became Region 9 Director, which is Southern California. And it's long been the largest region in sheer numbers. And in fact, and at that stage, just to give you, let me do where's Vern? Yeah. So Vern, actually the first person, Craig, was Vern's lover, in the term we used in those days, partner, I think is what we would say now. And that was actually the first, let's see if I can find it, the first obituary that we wrote, that we had in the connection. And so, just want to get in 1986. So again, we're talking about as that decade rolled around, you were beginning to see, and the first effects. Craig Roberts was one of the first. Vern, who was the first president, of the organized, kinship, and from 80 really, but then Kampmeeting 81 until Kampmeeting 82 when I took his place. And Vern passed away in the late 80s as well. So we're beginning to see that. That's creeping into the meetings. And so some of the themes that were going on in those days that we're still dealing with is how much energy did we want to put into, and how much energy do we have to put into finding new members, really, and obviously that was very important, versus the energy into ministering to each other, right? There was a lot of need in the folk, the folk over there, versus reaching out to the church, right? This thing about, this whole thing of having the conversation go on with, W. Duncan Egra and so on. And so one of the things that came out of that was Kampmeeting, right? So, what we realized early, the important role that Kampmeeting would play in keeping the organization really alive. Because all of these people, remember, it's not a large number. We're going to all different parts of the country. And a lot of us, a lot of folks didn't see other, kinship folk for the rest of the year. So what tended to happen in those early decades is people would go off, they would work hard, but they'd be so exhausted or tired. And so coming back to camp meeting, these experiences of spending time together, being nourished, having, singing together and hearing each other's stories, those, that you're going to do later in the week, has always been part of it. Another thing I want to just do again is that happened in those first 5 years is that, and this was not unique, this was going on in all of the different gay-related organizations, is how women and men work together. So, in those early years, if you think about it, if any of you are family members, at least, women and men, if the newspapers are true, women and men, was it Mars and Venus? But at least, they're in a relationship and they're trying to figure it out. So, but gay men, their focus is on other men. Lesbians, their focus is on other women. So, and there's a lot of differences. So, figuring that out in the world of the power structure, which we all know, as a white male, I'm a privileged person, etc. I've, always made more money than anyone doing exactly what a woman that's been doing exactly what I do for all these years. So how does that work? And there were some, let's say tough times on the board. There was a lot of discussion and and just to give you another one of these show and tell moments. We had one of them, in 1984, we were in Colorado. And if any of you are really dying to know, this was the schedule, the brochure from Colorado. And it was one of those where we were trying really hard to get the inclusive language. And if you remember that topic, it has tended not to be a big issue in more recent years. But in those days, not just us, but the Episcopal gay groups and the Catholic and everybody were all dealing with how do you do that? And we wanted to do it correctly. So there was an MCC member, Willie Smith, who was a former Adventist. And MCC, for anyone who doesn't know, is called Metropolitan Community Church. It's a non-denominational religious organization, that's very much organized around having gay parishioners and gay clergy. And so what we did is we asked, figured they knew all about it. They knew all about the inclusive language. So we asked Willie to put together a songbook for us. And and the board agreed that we would have this this inclusive language songbook. With a certain amount of this took negotiating. This wasn't easy because the musicians in our group were saying like, well Martin Luther's songs that are have a lot of male imagery and so forth. How can you mess around with some of those songs? So anyway, so he showed up at something that clearly it was not remotely. So again, it was one of those. I'm not suggesting this is the way to solve the problem, but just to tell you what happened is that we decided that the board had voted, so we needed to make it happen. Even though it wasn't a case of just we'll work on it for next year. So I can tell you that I at least spent a whole evening going through this thing, crossing out some songs and changing some words. Hopefully it sounds funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. I can tell you. For those of us who didn't get to bed till about 3 that day. And then in the church, I just want another thing I just want to read to you. This is to give you an idea of where in that first half of the 80s, again, we're talking about, remember, the church is sounding quite open. And this is a editorial from the Adventist Review that came out in April 26, 1984. And so, and it's entitled, this piece of it is The Church and the Homosexual. So just, I thought I'd give you an idea. To me, listen to the tone, and obviously it ends up at the usual place, what the Bible says. But during the past 2 decades, homosexuality, a topic once almost never discussed openly, has been brought to public attention in an unprecedented manner. The homosexual lobby has become a force that politicians take seriously, and churches also have had to decide how to relate to this age-old but now much publicized issue. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church, homosexuals have formed an organization, not endorsed by the denomination, known as SDA Kinship International, Inc. If you don't think we weren't delighted by this. So the group sponsors a yearly camp meeting with a K, and obviously we were trying to make sure everyone understood it was a kinship camp meeting and not a C camp meeting. Kampmeeting, in which Christian issues are examined, particularly in the light of homosexual concerns. The group sends out a newsletter and press releases about its activities. It has also sent several hundred information packets to selected Adventist ministers to help them become conversant with homosexual issues. As I recently read Kinship's educational materials, 2 items in particular caught my attention. The first is a sermon by William Sloane Coffin, from the Riverside Church in New York, non-denominational. The sermon, Dr. Coffin offered an alternative interpretations to many of the biblical passages that for years have been used to condemn homosexual behavior. Despite the arguments that he and certain other capable scholars have put forward, we feel the overwhelming weight of evidence still condemns such practices. Considering what came later, this is all pretty mild. The second item of the Kinship release concerned me with several testimonies about the ostracism homosexuals have faced in the Adventist Church and the almost total absence of people, ministry and laity alike, who seem capable of treating homosexuals with compassion. If, as the testimony suggests, there are a few people within the church to whom a person with a socially stigmatized problem can turn for help and understanding of the church, then the church has failed in its mission. Is it not a hospital for sinners? Right? So this is, if on the other hand, a person involved in homosexual practices comes to the church seeking acceptance by demanding that his or her behavior be declared acceptable, then the church cannot oblige. I'm going to skip down because the rest of some of this other stuff. Again, all of it in a good tone. While members should act with visible love and concern, the 2 parties ultimately may have to agree to disagree, because the church views homosexual practice as immoral. Some form of discipline may result. But then, while the church feels morally compelled to condemn homosexual activities, members are never justified in the derogation of the homosexual. This is, again, the Adventist Review. Terms that demean, such as queer, that's evolved over the years, should not be part of the Christian's vocabulary. Conversely, euphemistic terms such as gay should equally be avoided. So you can see, the point I'm getting at, I won't continue on for this, but it was a much more, to me, it came across, and I think for all of us, and certainly in a world where we're trying to get to know, have the Adventist people get to know us, this was a major breakthrough. Clearly not something that kept sticking in the consciousness, but. So anyway, that's again about that first half, what was going on. So let me review. Point being made, we were just spending a lot of energy putting the organization together, a lot of pain and so forth, but the church, was being open-minded. At least they were speaking to us. There was correspondence back and forth between Ron Lawson and W. Neva. And in the larger, world out there, it was pretty bleak. Everything was quiet. Most of the people that were coming to us were still, as I said, will and grace had not happened. So it is not in the ether. A lot of people came thinking and we heard this over and again, we come to Kampmeeting, I thought I was the only gay person in the world. I thought I was that kind of a horrible person. Then as time went on, one other thing I would is the quest thread. And during this time, in the early 80s. Remember, Colin came to that first Kampmeeting. So now what we're hearing as those days went on, and I can remember, I said to someone who was wanting to go to Quest, and figure out if they could change, that, it was one of those, well, try it out. Better to do something proactive. If you don't feel you can come straight to us, we think it's a mistake and a waste of time. But at those stages, we didn't know anybody was being abused. We figured, and a lot of people came to us and said, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I met a lot of other gay people. So I learned quickly I wasn't the only one. And some of the people said, I met my first boyfriend. It turned out, so on. But of course, as time went on, it got darker because the people coming out were role. As a professor, sociology was used to doing research, and so he would interview those folk. And he put together a paper, a significant length paper, that he then sent out to the general conference officials, and from Neil Wilson through the executive team and so forth, which of course, let's just say they did not appreciate. Because one thing I think we would all agree that even today, the church does not like to be embarrassed in a public setting. So that first thing was just to them. So they basically said, oh no, can't be. So then of course we felt morally compelled. So you see, the point I'm getting here is life is radicalizing to give it to the newspaper. So in Reading, Pennsylvania, Front Page News, which is where the Quest Learning Center was about Colin and his abusive activities. Well, this, of course, caused some things to change quickly. So that was going on. And to give you an idea, again, to put some timeline, the 1987, or the 1984, which was this one, when we were in Potsdam, Pennsylvania. Actually, I don't think I have that one. Anyway, 1984, the camp meeting was not far from Reading. So a number of us went, I think there were probably 10 of us, went down to the Quest Learning Center. We met with Colin and a number of his, clients and enrollees. And so it was a very, interesting, again, the conversation still going on, but it was beginning to get darker. And then, one of the things I'd like to make about this, and conscious of the time, 1987, in doing this, and I kind of view as a tipping point for those early efforts to try to do it through the conversations and so forth. First of all, in January of 1987, Quest shuts down as a result of this, right? The publicity of the Adventist Church pulled its funding from the newspaper articles. Our tone was changing in the July connection of 1987. Another name that I think that played a major role, Larry Halleck, who was in my mind one of our greater writers and thinkers in the organization, and been part of helping Kinship get founded, wrote a very moving article in the connection about moving on, and part of it was all the things about how working with the church was too much for him. He could no longer be an Adventist, and so on and so forth. And again, happily, not every that he felt that way. But that trying for X number of years, and not working. In October of 1987, the Kinship sponsored a protest in front of the GC, where we used our banners, and so they got some newspaper coverage. As you can imagine, that didn't go over so well either. And then as a result, I think this is important, in December 9th, 1987, so count the numbers. In November we did that. Again, I can't say that it was cause and effect, but it had to have been part of the ether. The Adventist Church sued Seventh-day Adventist Kinship in a lawsuit for trademark infringement. So that was in 1987. This, of course, was, here we are, poor little, I think we bring in like $40,000 at that stage of life a year, which barely covers the costs of Kampmeeting and other things. And suddenly we're getting, sued by the church. So, what do you do? So I remember the conversations amazingly. And this was toward the end of my term, and Marge Doyle, who was the vice president at the last few years of my terms, was becoming president the next year. And so should we step back and change our name? That it could easily just be Kinship, not Seventh-day Adventist Kinship. And there's a legal argument that we could have become Adventist Kinship, which probably still would have been descriptive enough. Or did we want to go, in other words, defend the lawsuit? So, not going through all of that, we decided that we would defend the lawsuit. But of course, how, right? They've got all the money in the world, but we don't. Well, we were really lucky. Any lawyers in the group, in the audience? Okay. So we basically got pro bono representation by a major firm, Fulbright and Jaworski, which is a name that you'll hear. And so they, this went on. So again, 1987 to October 3rd, 1991, and on the opinion was handed down. But what I'm pointing out here is we had 4 years of, needing to go in and do depositions, and all the stress that goes with you're about to be sued. And, of course, everyone's worried about that they're going to be personally liable, and you have to know, and so the decision came down. And for those of you who are into this kind of thing as well, I have a copy, actually, of the actual opinion. And I'm going to just take a couple of minutes off of it. I'm conscious of time. But in other words, when this lawsuit came down, our defense, right? So first of all, for any of you who don't know much about let's start with what is trademark law. It's basically, and the name of a company can be protected legally, but so nobody else can use it. All right? And so the defenses against it is, of course, that we didn't use it, but nobody was saying that because it's in the name of our organization. But we could say that one of the defenses is they took too long to try to defend it, to sue us, like we've been around since 1981 when we became a corporation, right? 1987 is 6 years long enough. Other things, that were possible. So that's actually, that term is called lashes. Fair use, in other words, it really just describes that we are at Seventh-day Adventists who are part of this, so we're allowed to use it. But everybody knew that was not likely to work, because fair use is usually used like when a critic, quotes a book, so like they're reviewing the book and they quote a paragraph, and so that's considered fair use. They're allowed to put in their review. And then the last one, of course, the most powerful one, is that it was generic. Which of course, and why is it powerful? Because that means that not only can we use it, but if it's generic, it means that they don't have a trademark anymore, etc. And that basically they can't defend it against anybody. So when those examples they always use about Seventh-day Adventist child molesters, of course that was always, if you allow homosexuals, you're going to allow child molesters, you're going to allow polygamists, and all the rest of it. So that was another one of the defenses we used. And when the opinion came down, we were quite happily shocked to find that the judge basically put it on the fact of genericness. The judge, and just to give you another idea, we were not unhappy that it was a female judge in the Central District of California that got the case when the whole thing started. So we thought that might have a good sign, and then ultimately it ended up that it did. So, and to tell you that this was of course scary to them, because what happened was we were expecting the church to appeal to the Ninth Circuit. And of course, they were, I suspect, particularly concerned that if this was upheld, then suddenly, they would not be able to defend it against anybody. And I'm just going to read you a little bit, if it's of any interest to you, of what the court holding, was. They basically talk about that Seventh-day Adventist was officially adopted. That the that the Adventist Church was established in 1850, but the structure was established in 1860. Who knew? Prior to that time, Seventh-day Adventists were known by a variety of names, including Seventh-day People, Advent Sabbath Keepers, the Church of God, Shut Door Seventh-day Sabbath, and Annihilationists. And the name was clearly in use prior to its adoption at Battle Creek. Let's see. I'm going to skip that part. And then she also talks, the judge talks about the use of the name Seventh-day Adventist as used by at least two breakaway churches, the Seventh-day Adventist Church Reform Movement, if you've ever heard of that one, and the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association, without opposition by the General Conference. Long story short, basically the judge ruled they hadn't enforced it in the past. It was not, they were not going to enforce it. So, Kinship, of course, so the church, though, decided not to appeal it. Of course, what that meant, they were trying to limit the damage, because of the Ninth, basically this local court decision only is the law for us. And another judge can take it and can decide they agree with it or not. But if it became adopted by the Ninth Circuit, which has all of the Western states, then that's the law of the Western United States. Of course, it went to the Supreme Court and they lost again, then they'd have no control. And one last thing on that, and I realize I'm talking a lot, but is that most churches, are not trademarked. So things like Catholic and Episcopalian, all of that is, anybody can use those things. The only one that I know of that actually has been protected is the Church of Latter-day Saints, etc. They've managed to hang on to to their trademark, but the things like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, on the other hand, you can use. Anybody can use those things. All right, little tidbit from those of us who like the law. All right, so again, the point, now I'm in the second half of the 80s, and then what I'm trying to explain to you is how that early day hope had now become a lawsuit. And by 1991, and really, any discussion that we were having with that top level of the church, shut down. It's not, and of course, in many ways, it was great for the organization because it forced us to realize, your point, Stephen, that it's the people in the pews, it's the individual church pastors with all the politics they have trying to do that, to change minds and to help. What I do, actually, the one point I want to say, I've always felt, and this is one of the reasons why when they say I've been involved and I haven't gone away yet, some people would wish I would, is that I've always, felt that that really the chance of the church changing its, this is just my philosophy, not kinship is not connected. The church of its changing, the upper church changing its theology has no chance until they change on women's ordination. Because if they can't get it figured out when they talk about 51% of the people sitting, or whatever the number is, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, really, of the majority of the people sitting in the pews, if they can't figure out that there's a reason why they should do that, and I'm not going to try to go down that rat hole in case any of you feel strongly, but they're never going to get to it on our level. But it really helped the organization move to a scenario where we needed to focus on reaching out to our members, finding them, and spend less time on the other. That said, one of the other things that Ron did with Kampmeeting is really the early 25 years. We knew that what we were doing there was, really the most important was to help feed ourselves and to help each other. But another thing was, and again, I give Ron a lot of credit, and again, I followed, Dave. Ron was probably the first 15 years, and Dave's been the next 22, or whatever the number is bringing in clergy or people to present. And it was probably even more so in those days, because now, in those days, a lot of the people didn't know they knew any gay people. So we were bringing in professors from the colleges trying to seed the institutions by having them come to us for a week in a scenario where they got to hear our stories and got to know who we were and knew that we didn't bite, any of those, horrible things, and that there were people who really cared about their relationship with God. And then, and I think it's another major event is that because another thought that I always had is that as long as it's just us, that is gay people, trying to push our program, and again, so Stephen and Deneen, when you came to that board meeting and we heard what you wanted to do to create that first movie, what did you tell me it was 1992 or something?
No, 2009.
Oh, 2009. 2009. So, a long, during that whole period, there are other things that we did. We had a conference and we had books and so on. But the idea that somebody else besides us thinks it's important for the Adventist Church's future that this conversation happen, wow, that would be something that is really exciting. All right, so I want to just take a few more minutes to do a few things, to bring in some names of people who are significant, who are, some are on this quilt. Richard Hamilton, was a medical doctor in San Francisco, and in those early, we're talking, as I mentioned, our first, recognition of what AIDS was probably in 86, 87. And remember the cocktail, which made it into a controllable disease, was in 92 or 93. So we had about 7 years where we would go to Kampmeeting and we would see people who physically were deteriorating. So in other words, we knew in looking at them that they would not be at the next Kampmeeting. So in the realm of when some things become more petty, let's just put it that way, when you're dealing with a life and death situation. And so Richard Hamilton came to us, in the early part of the 80s. You remember the first New York Times article on what was then considered grid or other things was in the 83, I believe. It might have been 84, 83 realm. So those first number of years, he came. He had a medical practice in San Francisco. Of course, it quickly became almost entirely AIDS patients. And so he came in. He would have the latest, but it was always in the context of those 7 years that there is no cure. All we have are things. And then what do you do to not get sick and so forth. In a realm where, a lot of the outside, society was viewing that as it's because of your sexual activity and so forth. And again, remember, Ronald Reagan never mentioned AIDS in any of his press releases or speeches or anything else, and that was until '88. So, and then, some of the others, and then, we have, where's the one with the car? Tim McClure. Again, in other words, it's not all the leadership or whatever it is. Tim McClure would come to those early camp meetings. He had that crazy, 1960 or 59 Cadillac convertible kind of thing, which of course he'd drive up like a bus, a short bus or whatever. And he had an organ, a portable organ that he would carve into camp meeting, and he would sit there and play this, this organ, anyway. But anyway, these are people we had gotten to know. And Bernie Ochoa. Bernie was, certainly was one of those people who brings joy and life and happiness into any meeting he's in. He was bubbly, and he would lead the. We had, particularly when we were in campsites and so on. There'd be an early morning exercise. You wanted to do jumping. Anybody wanted to do jumping jacks? Let's just say that I was never at these things. But at 7 o'clock in the morning, Bernie was out there, to help you exercise. And so these people, became. And one of the things about this change, and I think this is something to me that also reflects what was going on in the culture, is that those questions, those more significant angers that we had in those early days between the men and the women, I think it became really evident, to the men, that who were the people that were helping, not just in kinship, but who were the people who were often doing the helping and the caring for their gay brothers, were lesbians. And so, and I think, and certainly that sense of privilege, and except for being gay, I'm still the white guy who should be able to do what he wants to do. Some of that died down, and at some point I'm just going to stop talking, and perhaps some of the women might say they have any views on any of this, but certainly my view is that we became a much closer. A lot of those things that seemed large before, things like death and dying and lawsuits and so on, became much smaller as we suddenly realized that we really were each other's brothers and sisters. So some of these things were happening in those late 80s. And again, I'm going to stop here shortly, but I just want to tick off a few things that became significant. In 1997, Carol Grady, came to us and started a support group for parents and friends. And how many people know Carol? Carol is, she's this wonderful, I think she would not be offended if I said she's always had this grandmotherly aura. And again, she's a very calm, and she'd sit at our board meetings where people were starting to yell about something, and she'd knit, etc. And whenever we got to well, Carol, what do you think? And she'd have some great pearl of wisdom that she would just kind of drop on us, and we'd all say, we're acting like idiots. So let's go back to, so Carol, got into our lives. And then we started doing things like in 2001, it became really quite clear. Kinship has always traditionally had a larger number of men. Again, I don't know, but that still is true. It is. We heard the numbers. So we started Women and Children First. It became a program where, again, the women had a chance to be together, and we all understood that this was really important, so they could get some bonding time, and particularly before Kampmeeting, so when they got here, they weren't, the other women weren't all lost in a sea of men, or whatever it is. And some of the ones, there were a lot of, there were more men. 2002, we had our first European Kampmeeting, which I was lucky enough to attend, and Floyd's been working with them, and Catherine were renting a conference center and paying for speakers to come in, and these were all going to be people with that were going to do academically rigorous programs, and give us something that we could turn into a book. And so this is going to be some significant money. It would be $20,000 or $30,000 when you have an $80,000 budget that you basically spend every year. This is of concern. So, but we moved ahead. We were had been lucky enough earlier that Mike McLaughlin and Pam, worked on putting together an endowment fund that had accumulated into some, money that we could use that as a backstop while we applied for a grant, and so on. And then, and then as the years went on, there were other things like IAGC was. In that time the youth organization. Oh no, it became it wasn't ours. It was the different colleges, and so on. And then the last thing I just want to do is that there are, again, this is those of you who are new to this, your first Kampmeeting, just forgive me, but there are people I've been since I was president a couple of times again in the 2000s. I've been in front and my name's been bandied about. But there have been people who have come to the organization who had just worked their tails off for like a decade or two. People like Hal Jobe. Hal, was our office manager for many years, and his idea, it was his concept to start the quilt. He did a lot of, much of the needlework on the quilt. Mike McLaughlin and John Whelan. Mike, he was the treasurer. He was the president for a year. And was involved in the organization for a long time. Pam Roberts was after had a year. Marge Doyle, who I always became, our second president and was the president during the actual lawsuit period. I managed to get out of that, early in the game. Fred Casey, another person who was our office manager, who just kept like all of those books and things you see that we've had for years. He's had them in his garage. He'd have like 30 boxes of books and so on. And I have to say, they're, Linda and Jackie, these are people who have been involved for decades and continue to be involved and work their tails off. And there's a lot of, Yolanda has been involved since, way back when. Floyd. Again, I can't, I'm going to get Catherine, again, was our newsletter editor for, it seemed like forever, and so on. So, by definition, I'm sure Dave, as they already said, you've been involved. And I think the organization, as I speak to now, I'm about to end, just so you know, I'll let you know, is that for those of you who are at your first camp meeting and so forth, that whole thing of, it's about, when you come to it the first time, it's about where am I in my life? Where am I in my journey? As we talk about our theme this year. So this is a little hint, a little kind of probably disorganized, walk through the early years. But then it becomes, if the organization's lucky, it becomes about how can I give back? How can I help out? What's my niche? And the only way it works on a long-term basis is to be doing something that hopefully at least some of which you enjoy. I'm not going to look to you two, since these guys over here are also dealing with keeping the website open, but finding something that you enjoy. So again, if you're Stephen, and it's something, if you like to be, doing that creative work of filming and so on, or Dave, your background as a pastor and so forth, which obviously never left you. Some of us don't know why, but never left you, et cetera, and that caring for people. That's the thing that helps in the organization. So anyway, I'm going to stop now. Aren't you relieved? Are there any questions about anything about the organization or its history or? Yeah.
Why did you put international as part of your?
Oh boy, good question. I think there was a certain amount of delusion of grandeur to begin with. When we started out, we thought, might as well, and then, of course it was just a joke for the longest time. We had, but we were seriously wanting to, I don't think there was any doubt that we wanted to. But, and then we had, Samuel Pang and some of the other names from Canada. So we made our first inroads, and actually they even went as far as organizing, getting their tax deductibility from their government. And then we had some people in Australia, that's a whole other lecture, that went better or worse for some number of years. So but we were basically just trying to support them. If they needed something, or they wanted to know, if you had a sample bylaws. So, but then, actually, it's more recently, and I give those of people, we have now between Floyd with his knowledge of German, and we have Marcos with his knowledge of Portuguese, and Obed and a number of others with their knowledge of Spanish. Suddenly, you're able to do more. So Floyd, anything more you want to add to that? Yeah.
I know, Bob, that you could spend a whole other keynote on my question here, but you have this perspective of kinship, in some ways very unique. Could you just give a very short sense of where you think the projection of the future could be? Like, you see, you know where it started, you know where it's going.
Okay.
Well, what would you say is the next 5 or 10 years or 15 years of kinship, if you just had to sort of dream for a minute?
Okay, well that's a good one. Let me give you my it's not meant to be funny, but what I've always felt like, if our goal would be to not need to exist, right? So our goal would be to get to a place with the Adventist Church and, but more importantly, with the people in Adventism. They no longer need to have a support group because the churches are doing, all the things that we would hope they would do. So that is my delusion, or my dream, but that's not going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years. I'm hoping that I do believe in the realm of those things we started with. Do we minister to ourselves, that is the people who have come in? Do we find folk who are new? And how do we affect the church? And of course, throughout the organization, it's been a long process of trying to those jostling, because they're often in conflict. And one of the things that we had to do was to actually kind of decide that we wanted to stay connected to the church for the benefit of people coming to us who were still good at it. But I mean, to your point, I would say that becoming known and having things that are useful for them. I think the current organization, and I just step back and I'm obviously I think my day is being in the middle of that. The current board has has great plans for the web and getting out there, and then frankly affecting the church. Since I had no hope on the church ever changing its theology, and frankly, Neil Wilson was a dream compared to Ted Wilson, if I give my own personal opinion, etc. And so, I mean, frankly, the places you're taking us, I mean, I think it has to become something that becomes self-generated. And then the last one of reaching out and finding people. I mean, I know that's a never-ending battle. And then, in here, I mean, hopefully we're ministering to each other, and that we keep finding. And when we're not, we have the organization knows that we've never been perfect at it, and often we're not even really good at it. So hopefully, those of you who are here, like during this week, if you're not getting, or this weekend, if you're not getting what you think you want to get, if you haven't been meeting people, you're feeling isolated. You can just walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, I need to, talk to Floyd. Floyd talks to anybody." Just go up to someone and talk to me. I'm going to be here. We want you all to know how glad we are that you're here, and that we want you to find something valuable to it. So I don't know. It doesn't answer your question.
No, it does.
Anything else? Well, I do want to ask, Yolanda. She's been our longtime president now for quite a few years, and has been involved for a long time herself. So, by definition, are there anything that you feel like would be useful to know from? Again, this is I'm a guy from the guy's perspective. From where this has been and the roles I've played. But I mean, is there anything that or Keisha, anybody else that we can add to this that I didn't bring up? Excellent. I'm glad you covered it. Anything else? Okay, Dave?
I think one of the things you touched on, but can use some emphasis, especially for newer people, is the fact that we have an advisory group of people who serve to help provide us with insights because they're denominational employees and they are on our side as allies, and they've been a real asset to the organization.
And again, this is my personal view of this, and again, don't blame the organization for it. But I would, in the years, particularly in the 2000s, when I was president again for a while, I would go, and sometimes, those meetings, you would be talking about where our homosexuality and, and LGBT people and the role and all that type of thing would play in the church, and we would listen to some of the folk on that thing, and after they were done telling us the difficulties they were having, as in, things like teaching evolution. In other words, how do the science teachers teach evolution or history and so forth? And the in other words, some of those things, in their own churches, they were being open with us. And I would say that, I think to myself, because my original arc was to teach, either at an academy or, what became more likely in a college one day. And I do believe that God led in my basically understanding my sexuality early enough to switch over to law school, which took me on so my paycheck wasn't going to be, wasn't going to be impacted by, what was becoming perfectly clear was going to be my life orientation. So, and that happened at an early age because a lot of my peers, didn't recognize it. Some of whom I'd had a conversation with and say, someday you're going to end up going where I'm going. It's just going to take you longer. And, and waiting longer often became more complex. Marriages, children, all that type of thing. I felt that, I felt like God led in that role. Although I can tell you there were not too many people who were agreeing with me at the time. So, anything else? I don't want to drag this out. Any other questions? One more thing, I think this mostly does not have a few minutes, is that another thing, I'm perfectly aware at the beginning, it was all about being gay and lesbian. We have never really been very good on bisexuality. And it's only in the last few years that those of us, as both the culture And some people have come to us and educated us that we've learned more about, transgender, and the variations on identity and so forth. And so, again, this is where, we get it, we're educated, and we need to be educated. So many of you who are, whatever's going on in your life, et cetera, please, please let us know. I mean, it's not, I like to think none of it's, it's not intentional. Sometimes it's just stupidity, we have to learn. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.